This week's bonus announcement has to do with common interview question number 2. You didn't think there was going to only be one interview question, did you? But first, let's review. What is the very most important thing that you must do when preparing for an interview? Well, if you said practice ahead of time, you were right. Practice makes perfect. Last week I talked about the interview question, why do you want this job? This week, the question I would like to rehearse with you is, what is your top strength? And tell me about a situation where you demonstrated this strength. Now, why is an interviewer going to ask you this question? Well, number one, remember that they're going to consult several internet sources to find out good interview questions to ask. And this is always one of them. And it is legitimately a good question to ask a candidate because it asks them to think on the spot and to actually come up with what they think their strongest or best quality is. So the trick, though, is how to actually answer this question. What you don't want to do is try to read their mind and figure out how they want you to answer the question. The best way to answer this question, and the answer that will usually really work in almost any interview situation, is for you to first, ahead of time, figure out what the top 3 skills are that are required to do this job. And then, taking one of those skills, find one of your strengths that match one of them. And then that's what you talk about. I know that's confusing, so I'm going to explain more on the next slide. For people that don't prepare for this question ahead of time, they often fall into the trap of thinking quickly and coming up with an answer like, well, one of my best skills is I'm really good at math, or I'm really athletic. But remember, you're trying to match yourself to what the interviewer wants. And what he or she wants is someone who can do the job well and who will show up and stick with the job. So what they're looking for is someone that can do the job. Here's an example of how this would work in the real world. Let's pretend that you are interviewing for a job at a pet daycare place. That's the kind of place where people take their dogs and the dogs either stay overnight and they get exercised and fed and kept in a cage, but they're let out and they can play, or people that have nothing but money to spend on their pets take them every day so the dogs can have a little outing with other dogs. But they hire a lot of people because the animals need a lot of maintenance. So the skills that would be required for a job like this could be things like this. Someone who's good as working as part of a team, someone who's responsible, someone who has experience with animals, someone who has patience, or someone who is physically fit. Then, once you identify the skills required to do the job, you sit back and say, okay, where do I match up really well to one of those? So let's say you say, I'm a good team player and I'm also physically fit. Well, it's not enough to just say that you are those. You must also give the interviewer an example of how you demonstrate those. But at least now you've got your strengths and you know they match up to the job. So let's back up a little bit, and I want to tell you why I said that these particular skills were important for this job. Because I want you to understand the thought process so that when you have to come up with these answers, you'll be able to think the same way. Why did I say that being a team player would be important in a job like this? Well, in this type of job, you will work with different people, all of whom are doing different and overlapping work. So during the day, you'll bump into others as you try to do your job well. You may be cleaning dog cages, but someone at the same time may be feeding dogs in those same cages, and you and that person are going to need to work out a relationship in how you're doing this overlapping work. That's what I mean by being a team player. You're not isolated, and you need to be able to patiently handle different personalities and different needs without losing your cool. This kind of a job requires flexibility. Why did I say that you need to be physically fit to do this kind of a job? Well, in this kind of a job, you're not sitting at a desk. You're going to be moving around for your 8-hour shift. You'll be exercising animals, cleaning cages, and feeding and walking animals. These tasks require a lot of energy and some strength. You need to show that you're not afraid to sweat and get dirty. Okay, so now you're on the spot and you need to answer the question. And you're going to say, I am physically fit and I am good at working with other people. And I've got a couple examples to show you, Mr. Interviewer. One of them, an example of my physical fitness, is that I'm a member of the track team and I run the 1 mile. And this requires a lot of practice year round because I run it both for outdoor track in the fall and also for spring track season. So I'm very athletic having to do this sort of activity. That's the easy part. But now, because you're really well prepared for this interview, you also have an example of when you were a team player. So you say to the interviewer, a good example of my being a team player also involves my participation on the track team. I really wanted to run on one of the relay teams, and I was the best candidate for that team. But my coach took me aside one day and asked me if I would give up my spot to a younger runner so that she could develop her skills for next year after I graduate. He also asked me to train with her to keep my time sharp. I was really disappointed, but even though I knew it was the right thing to do for the team, and I did it, and I gained a new friend in the deal. I also earned the respect of my track coach and I think my other team members. So here's the formula. Figure out what skills the job requires. Write them down. You may have 3, 4, 5, or 6. Then determine what your strengths are and match them up to those skills. Develop and practice an answer with an example to answer the question, what's your best skill and how would you demonstrate that skill to me? Once you do this and once you practice it, this answer will roll off your tongue and you will feel very confident in the interview. If you practice what I've just gone over with you, I will guarantee that you will be able to develop a really strong answer to the question, what is one of your top strengths? And give me an example of how you demonstrate that strength in something that you've done in your job or in school. So keep calm, practice, and you'll be brilliant.